Thanks everyone for coming. We're obviously discussing today the proposal for the implementation of GIPs. Um, Blixer was supposed to sort of intro the proposal from his point of view. He had a great intro, but I guess I'll just kick it off. Basically, just stating that this proposal is, or something like it, is essential to be implemented this epoch, which is why it's happening. Just because, just the process for um, feedback coming through from the community and how that gets implemented into game design and game change, like changing of game parameters, just needs to be just elaborated on and codified into documentation so that it's just clear what the process is moving forward. And essentially, what this proposal does is it just it just streamlines that and it simplifies it. Um, we'll obviously be open to answering any questions that anyone might have after we've all sort of explained our point of view on it. I think the proposal all round is just like a solid starting point, and I'm sure that down the line it will be altered, but we've ensured that there's like no way for it to be abused, and there's just solid backstops throughout, which I'm happy to elaborate on a bit further on. Um, yeah, cool. I'll throw it over to Estrad.
Yeah, so this is something that we're tasked on doing for this epoch, and I think it's a more framework related IAP, so not the most exciting of stuff, but it is something that is necessary moving forward. And I know Caveman's deep into like processes and the framework for governance, so he could probably explain his point of view from both the game council side and from the IMC side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to talk about there, other than I think there needs to be a visibility for the community so that they can see that they are making a difference. They are helping create this game. That's one of the things that I find so powerful about DAOs and specifically Illuvium DAO in specific. I just love to be a part of the whole creation process, giving feedback and seeing those be implemented. And so having a way to document that and having it visible is important to me in the IMC and to the strategy council, obviously.
Ned asks, would having public GIPs allow people to drive the market? People with influence can suggest nerfs, buffs, and manipulate prices and front run the whole thing. Right. So essentially, the way that it works is anyone can suggest anything in feedback. The majority of feedback will probably be something that the team is already going to be handling, and the response is probably going to end up being in in the documentation, like in the governance process bit, like number two, and then if the solution is currently in development, or there's a justifiable reason why that problem will not won't be a problem anymore, it just isn't really a problem, that will be sort of explained. So GIPs are really just for those problems that the team isn't already resolving anyway. And also, as for GIPs being public, GIPs initially will be public in the sense that they will be voted on in snapshot. But if it proves down the line that too many people are just sort of exclusively just tracking, waiting in Discord for a GIP to be voted on to use that information for market trading and stuff, and that causes too much trouble, then we can consider creating a separate framework for more secret voting. But the reason why we're not doing that initially is that's actually just going to require a bunch of extra resources to keep that secure. So instead, we're just going to use the processes kind of already available to us with Snapshot. And beyond just that, the wording in a GIP, for example, let's say we're buffing a RAM fee, and we're increasing its speed. We're not going to put increase RAM fee speed stat by 5%. That won't be what the GIP would say. The GIP would be a little bit more vague in the sense of, well, we're just increasing RAM v speed, or like something like, or maybe even as vague as changing ramp fee speed, but it probably would signify the like direction of the change. And another thing that we've talked about internally and that I think is an appropriate way for things to be conducted is any like the team is actually going to be determining actual numerical values behind the scenes, and we actually I at least do not think it's appropriate for the gaming sub council members to be aware of like exact behind the scenes stat information that isn't public knowledge already, or like the exact changes. So even if someone in GSC was even trying to use that information for front running, there's also a ton of changes that are just happening because the team are just constantly making changes and adjustments from other feedback. So any kind of information that anyone's like finding out through just tracking GIPs just shouldn't be massively able to be traded on. So therefore, we've deemed it not a big enough concern for now, and it has obviously been written into the proposal that down the line, it like secret voting could become a necessity, but it's definitely not going to be initially a big problem, in my opinion.
I do want to voice, Ned, that there are some of us that are and do have those same concerns. So it's something that we are tracking, and if we do see that that has any impact, it'll be something that we resolve quickly or revise this entire process. Because I could definitely see some problems where it comes into play. And one solution that I just had off the top of my head, which I haven't been even told that a more astute blicker, was just having a GIP number and not even put any details in it, but that way we still have our vote and that's visible. And then when we do release the information after the patch or build is updated, then we could fill in the information if we can do that retroactively. I'm not sure. But then that way we don't share what's happening. But that way, if you're trying to vote on your game sub council based on their voting patterns, you'd be able to backtrack that and see exactly how they voted on certain patches.
So just from hearing that right now, Caveman, I am actually in favor of what you just said because I am one of the members that would prefer secret voting. But yeah, I think that would be a potentially great solution to the problem.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
just to be clear, it's not a complete fix, because we could theoretically change what we voted on, quote unquote, behind the scenes. So there are still issues that can come up with any private voting system we do set up. Go ahead, that's
Sure.
I mean, the current system will already be like somewhat kind of like that in the sense that it the proposal itself will be written vague, and then it's ultimately revealed what the stat change is in the patch notes that the team released, alongside all the other changes that are being implemented in said patch. Which like personally I'm kind of okay with, but I think Ned's also asked some good questions. So the bigger problem is a person who knows can affect on people's sentiment, can buy sell items, then publish the GIP and dump on them. Like realistically, the only person that could do that is somebody that's on the team, like not on the team, sorry, in the gaming sub council. But I don't think they're gonna have enough information to be able to like massively do any kind of meaningful front running. And also, we do have that blackout proposal in place, so to hopefully prevent that or disincentivize it. But like that is a genuine concern, and that is why I don't think that specific like outright stats just shouldn't be shared with gaming. So like I don't think it's relevant for the most part. It's just really the direction in which so like the change needs to be, and will team have precedence if GIP receives positive votes but is deemed bad for the game by the team? So this is a common thing, like misconception, is that well, the way that GIP works is the problem is presented to the team, and then the team provide a solution. There's not like if the team don't think there is a solution that the game that would work for the game, they just wouldn't provide a solution. They just say this can't work for these reasons. The team isn't forced to provide a solution by gaming sub console asking them for one. They might have good reasons why a solution couldn't happen or isn't needed for X problem. So if something is deemed bad for the game, the team very much have like solid blocking power on it. 4 out of 5 votes are needed to pass a GIP. So not only is it that all the gaming sub-council members that are not the team member could vote something in, sure they could, but that would also have to not be vetoed by the IMC, which the IMC would likely block it if it's just going to be bad, like blatantly bad for the game. The team might also mention that to IMC, but also the team themselves have provided that solution. So they're not going to provide anything that's going to be outright damaging for the game. So is it possible for people to intentionally ruin a character just because it's OP at the time? I don't think so. Like if it's slightly OP, like it should be balanced. But for the most part, it's probably not even going to be balanced by a GIP. It will probably just be balanced by the team balancing it. I think the majority of feedback that comes from the community, if the team is functioning properly, would already be something that the team is acknowledging and working to fix and won't require a GIP. GIPs really are just for those places where certain feedback has just fallen through the cracks and the team hasn't acknowledged it, but it's still relevant. It's really just for those cases, which is where the council steps in and is the voice of the community in that space essentially.
And I just also want to mention that you don't necessarily have to reach that 50 vote threshold or whatever threshold it is at the current time. If you bring up an idea or feedback and a game sub-council member sees that, they can immediately push that forward if they think it's deemed necessary. So just one other note in there.
100%. And gaming sub-council members could also even themselves just come up with feedback just from their own expertise, right? That could lead to GIPs. If anybody else has questions, feel free to ask. Gang, you mentioned at the start that you can ensure that this can't be abused. Can you please explain how you're ensuring this won't be abused? And who is going to be implementing these guidelines to keep watch of all this? I mean, so essentially the way that it can't be abused is, firstly, a GIP cannot be made of something that the team isn't providing the solution for. So gaming sub-council bring a problem to the team, whether that problem has come from the community or themselves. That's a separate issue. The team at that point can tell gaming sub-council, like, oh, this can't be solved for these reasons, so there is no solution, so we can't do a GIP out of this. So that would be blocked that way. And or the team says, oh, here are solutions that would work and that you could use and make into a GIP. So that's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is once that's been like worked on together with the team and GSC, they can edit that together into a GIP, at which point it's then presented to the IMC. The IMC then have 2 days to block that proposal, to veto it if they deem that appropriate, which will, for the most part, just be if something is just looks off or just doesn't seem appropriate or doesn't seem within the scope of GIPs, which the team would likely have already blocked far down the line, beforehand anyway. But like it's a second line of defense. At which point that happens, and the IMC can block it. And if it gets past the IMC, at that next point, it can then be voted on through a normal snapshot vote by game sub-council, at which point they require 4 out of 5 votes. So that's a super majority, which it's going to be like something that's obviously good. It's going to be, unless like all 4 of the, and like then there's the theory of what if all game sub-council members are corrupt apart from the team member, then they could vote it up. But the team would never have allowed that thing to go that far because the team have to give that solution forward that the GIP is made from. So it's kind of a like you can't have, so I just think it's a loop that you kind of can't really bypass. There's enough. I think those are literally the blocks to prevent it from being abused, and I think that's sufficient. Yeah.
If I could answer Karen, I also answered Ned, so he's good there. But for Karen, you bring up a valid point, and I think that's something that we need to push towards the community a little bit, which is that we should really be thinking of, okay, what is the problem? And then presenting the problem. And every time you're doing that feedback, that's most likely the better way to do it, just because the game or the team has the experience. They have designers and developers who've been working on games for a long time, so they'll be able to find the best solution. With that being said, if you can provide a suggestion in a way to implement a solution, we would love to hear that. And if we find that it's really good, we can strongly suggest that to the team. There's no guarantee that your specific solution will ever work, will be accepted by the team. But I definitely think that that's a powerful thing. And we've already seen that with a couple members that have presented ideas that have already been implemented in the game. So,
Yeah, totally. It's sort of stated within the proposal that it's suggested that it's formatted as a problem to be solved, but like I'm certain that many people will come with their own solutions as well as the problem, and maybe even if the problem isn't even stated outright, I think the problem kind of ends up being implicit, so you can just kind of figure out what the problem is from there, and then GSC can bring that to the team for a solution. But as Caveman rightly said, like sometimes a great solution will come from the community, and that will come forward as a suggestion and be given to the team, and the team could just be like, you know what, that is a great solution, and it does work for these reasons. So actually, like we can that works if we consider this and this as well, like whatever. So it still needs to go through the team though, right? Because if like I remember back in the day, there was this whole proposal about making it so that in-game rewards of ILV could be claimed as SILV2 as well as ILV. Like just if you wanted to, you could just claim it as SILV2 because you'd want to just spend it in game. That was sort of the logic. And that had been discussed in this community for like well over 6 months, I think over two epochs. And then I got into the council and I actually just brought that back up. And I literally asked Aaron, "Oh, like, is this proposal actually doable?" Because I was like, we might as well actually make it into a proposal and actually vote on it because it's still never been voted on. And Aaron basically told me that it's just completely non-doable. So it's completely pointless if we're just discussing stuff that the team couldn't even implement, right? Like, what's the point? So yeah, the team need to confirm that it's implementable into the systems that exist, right? So, from Scrub, if this proposal is merely a channel for the community to push feedback to the team that was not acknowledged, why does it need to skip the regular proposal process, specifically ownership of our governing body IMC in approving these proposals? So, the main reason, as stated in the proposal, is that gaming sub council have specific expertise there. And the other thing is that like we don't want it to be a game made by committee, and if the solutions are coming because this way it is a problem being brought up as feedback and then the team providing solutions, as is stated, whereas if it was going through the regular proposal process, anyone could make a proposal to balance the game. And frankly, that's just wildly inappropriate, especially in a game where assets have monetary value. Like, I just think it's, follow the same guidelines, but the approval would be with IMC still. Like, I don't know. Why does IMC can veto it? It's basically the same as approval. The only difference is like IMC just doesn't have to spend a bunch of time discussing on topics and like having to vote on topics that they're not necessarily like equipped to vote on. Like they should just be vetoing stuff. that seems glaringly like to have an issue of some kind, or if there's just a massive misunderstanding of it. But I think it's just inappropriate for the IMC to be involved that deeply with approving in-game balance stuff. I guess that's just a matter of opinion, though, right?
In speaking a little bit from the IMC, and at least this is what I feel from them, they don't want to go to nitty gritty either. They want to kind of remain high level. They're going to check risk assessment after a patch or some kind of build update's been proposed, and they're going to make sure that that's safe. And then they're going to lean on the expertise of the game subcouncil. This is the same for, like, let's say the marketing subcouncil. If they were working on partnership deals or a campaign, I, as a game subcouncil member, IMC, I'm not too interested in seeing all of the details around that marketing campaign. But I do want to have at least an ability to check off and make sure that it's not too extreme. They're not like spending like all of our remaining budget just in marketing, which may be a good reason. But then I would want to see strong reasonings and rationale behind it. But that's the way I'm thinking of, and that could change from IMC to IMC. So I do understand your thoughts there, Scrubadub, but I think that the veto is enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a matter of opinion, as Scrub sort of saying. Apply the same thing to marketing and strategy. Why don't they have their own like proposals? Like I think the main point is like game subcouncil will also have normal proposals that go through the normal process. GIPs are just much more finicky, specific things, and that are mainly just coming from the team. It's just this specific process that I don't know. Maybe I don't see another way of doing it. I think we're all here open to alternatives, but I've yet to see an alternative brought forward, and I'm pretty much certain that once if this proposal ends up becoming what it like into reality, what we're gonna see is as soon as open beta comes, it's gonna meet with the reality of feedback and all of these things. And at that point, game subcouncil is very likely going to make some changes to it to just improve that process and to streamline it and improve it over time. I'm sure this proposal isn't the end all be all, but I do think it's a great beginning framework for game subcouncil to just have clarity on how that should all work. Yeah. And the justification for why we're adding all the other scope and not just in-game balances. Uh, can you start over? I just got here. No. Uh, this is being recorded. Hopefully, the recording is fine. And it should be up on um, that Illuvium Plus channel on YouTube, I believe. Um, Yeah, I don't think there's that much other scope. For the most part, it's just nothing major can go through a GIP. I think that's been clarified in the proposal. And like if there are just some features that have to go through that way, I think that's all right as well. Um, yeah, I think over time it will be improved, but yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a kickoff. Cool. So I think we've covered a good bit there. I don't think there's actually too much else to discuss. We've discussed most of the main points of contention. I mean, I'm open if anybody else has any further questions. Estra, Caveman, do you guys have any other like comments you want to add?
No, unless anyone has more questions in the chat. I know Scrub is typing, so maybe we'll see what he says. But other than that, I think it's been pretty well covered. As well as everyone can feel free to read the proposal again in the governance channel and post their feedback there.
Yeah, and definitely head over there and put a thumbs up or down on it if you agree or disagree with the proposal. Definitely add your feedback. Caveman, what are your comments on just the thoughts from the rest of Game Sub Council, the feedback coming from there?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to make it so it's one, visible, and two, it doesn't have to go through the full process. And you've mentioned that already. I think this does it to some extent. I think the Game Sub Council would prefer, less official ways of doing things to streamline it more. But they're also understanding of this. They just think early in this process, where we're at right now, there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of iterations, and this could just become another bureaucratic layer. But I think that they're willing to do this, and I think we're all ready to keep expanding on GovV2. So
Awesome. Any objections to wrapping it up here? I think we've sort of said what there is to say and answered pretty much all there is to answer.
alrighty, well, I'm gonna head off. Thanks everyone. Have a great day. See you guys in PvP.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Later.
Can't wait for PvP. I'll see you guys later then.